Okay, so now that we have the two different, pieces of terrain, one we, primed with spray primer, one we primed with just latex paint from the Oops aisle. And you can see it's on there, it's good. I can still see all the detail, that's great. Same thing with this one, it looks really good with the spray can of black on it. I have the other pieces here, but I wanted to paint each one and just kind of show you the process that I'm going to go through. And once again, I'm going to use Oops paint. These are just little pots of paint that were, somebody left them. And we're going to use them for doing the base coats on this terrain. So we'll get started with that. Of course, I have my cup of water, my tile, my paper towel, an assortment of brushes, and on the colors of the paint, I will say this, is I do have one that's slightly darker and one that's kind of a medium. So I'm going to do this as the base and this is the mid-tone, and then I'll probably do miniature paint or something that goes along with these on top of that. We'll see how it turns out first with the base coats, and then I'll go from there. So I'll probably use this Citadel large draw brush is what they call it, but it's a good flat 1-inch brush. I like it a lot for doing these big flat surfaces like on a tank or a piece of terrain. And we'll start with this darker color. It is really dark blue. I'm going to use that as our base color, and I'm imagining that the plane went down on like an ice planet or something like that, and so they've painted it into the colors that would be camouflage or hide the actual flyer when it was on the ground. Okay, I put some of that paint out and I mixed a little water into it until I got the consistency that I'm looking for. And then I'm just going to go into painting this, and you have to be somewhat neat, not completely neat, because of course it's a piece of terrain and we can go back in and touch up and stuff. There are a few pieces of glass on this. Even though I'm coating them with this base coat, I'll probably go back and paint the glass slightly different, just so you can poke that detail out on the actual piece of terrain. And like I said, you'll go back in and of course clean up all the little details, once you get this base coat on and you're pretty happy with it. You can start doing other stuff. You're just trying to get dark colors in first so that you can work from the dark out to the light. Just like Caravaggio, the painter. He always worked, or Rembrandt, they were very similar that way, where they worked from darkness out to the light. And we can use that same technique when we're painting terrain and miniatures. This coat doesn't need to be very thick. It just needs to go on there. We are painting it all the same color right now, but all these little pipes and details, and like I said, the glass, you're going to start picking out different colors for things along the way so that, it looks good, but it all has this similar palette to the color scheme, which is what you're looking for. And like I said, I'm being a little bit messy with this as we're putting down the base coat, and we'll go back and pick out details as we need to with other colors and stuff. I think that's it. Looks like I got a little run going there because I'm turning it funny directions. That's not a big deal. We can go back into this dark brown with other colors, you know, once we get the terrain going in the direction we want to. I'm just going to turn it on this side to make sure I got the ends of all these pipes and girders and things. All right, that looks pretty good. There's one. You know, that's what it looks like with just the base coat on. And then we're going to go into this one. Now, granted, they're not starting. You know, that one started as black. This one's going to start as dark brown. But I think that this is a dark enough color that they'll look very similar when they get on the tabletop, and you won't really know that I based one with brown and one with black. And really, that's just an experiment so you can see, hey, what's it like if I paint plastic or resin terrain with just a latex paint, and will that work? Because this is the simplest way to get large quantities of paint without costing you an arm and a leg. I mean, these little cans that I bought, these little pots that I'm painting out of right now, they were only $2 or $3 a piece. They were very inexpensive because, like I said, somebody had returned them and they're just selling them as like a sample color. And it's very funny that, like I said, you know, not all the time I have to go into multiple like hardware or paint stores to kind of fish for this stuff. But just, you know, when I'm out and about and I'm looking, or maybe I'm doing some other project, I'll go and look at the paint rack and just take the moment to kind of go look at it and see if there's any oops paint. And if there is, I typically, depending on what colors, you know, I haven't really picked up any like lime greens or anything, but anything that's going to be a base color like this dark blue, browns, blacks. I've even picked up some tans and stuff along the way that really help me, you know, with terrain without me having to pick up bottles and bottles of miniature paint to paint my terrain. You know, there's options out there is what I'm saying, and you just have to be a little creative and a little frugal and take your time. But once you get in the habit of doing this, you're going to find this oops paint all over the place, unless there's like 10 of you in the same city or the same town and you're all clamoring to get the same oops paint to do this kind of thing. All right. And that means that I assume that there are people watching these videos. That's definitely one of the things that I don't know as I've just started back doing things, you know. And we took a long break there because of, you know, life situations. But I just, I really believe in helping other people get the most out of their tabletop miniature hobby. And this is one way that you can get a lot of, you know, great looking terrain just by simply doing this kind of work. Okay, it looks like I've got that all coated the way I wanted to. So, you know, it only took me a minute or two to do those two pieces. I'm going to do these other three pieces while I'm here. You know, and like I said, this is just regular latex enamel paint and, you know, water-based latex. And I'm just mixing a little bit of water so I get the right consistency, and it very swiftly goes on without any trouble whatsoever. And I might have to do 2 coats of this. It just depends, you know, how much of this brown shows through. But this gives you a good indication of how long this would actually take. I mean, start to finish with this piece so far, I probably don't even really have maybe an hour into it, you know, at this point, you know, with the base coat on it. And then, you know, just like with your miniatures is once you get the base coat on and you're kind of cranking through the other stuff, it goes pretty fast. I mean, you need to pick out details and stuff, but you'd be surprised how fast this goes. And I'll say this is with terrain, you don't actually have to have all the detail you would like on a tank or on a miniature because, well, it's a piece of terrain, you know? You want it to look good and you want to pick out details so people can see, you know, what work you've put into it, just so it looks great on the tabletop. But remember, I mean, it's not what everybody focuses on when they get to that table. I mean, granted, I'm looking at the terrain a little bit harder, but most people go, wow, that's great looking terrain. Let's roll some dice. And they're looking at your army sometimes more than they are to terrain or your display board. But, you know, take whatever time makes sense for what you do with your terrain. Now, if I'm going to a big tournament or I'm building terrain for a big tournament, I really take my time to kind of put more work into it. Don't get me wrong. I've been to tournaments where, you know, they have pieces of felt cut out or cardboard stuff, and it's not that great looking. But, you know, it's whatever the TO wants to do. And it also depends on how big, you know, how big the tournament is. I've been in some really big tournaments where, you know, they had to have like 300 to 400 pieces of terrain, you know, for a tournament. Man, it's hard to build that much terrain and then keep it organized and keep it in good shape. Unless you're doing things like I'm teaching on this channel, you know, terrain is just not going to last long, especially with that many people touching it, you know, or even a hobby store. You know, you want it to be pretty good looking and look nice on the tabletop, but you know that some people are going to be rough with it. You try to teach people to be courteous with your terrain and take care of it, and, you know, have some rules established so that things don't get out of hand with your terrain. But then again, like I said, with the techniques I'm teaching on the channel, you should be able to build terrain and make it look good without, you know, breaking the bank. And it should last a very long time because, you know, the terrain that we're doing and the techniques we're using really make it have better durability than most people are ever going to get out of their terrain. By doing the glue the way we do, by doing the, you know, the coat of clear coat at the end, and by storing your terrain the right way, you keep good looking terrain for a very long time. You just got to take care of it. And you got to do the maintenance for it. You know, you got to do the things that are going to keep it in good shape. Like, you know, making sure you have storage boxes with lids so they don't get dusty. I mean, there's all these little techniques that you're going to have to implement. And it takes, yeah, a little bit longer. Instead of just draping a piece of cloth over books and jars and things like that, you're actually building the terrain or the display table to make it look great. And, you know, just take that little extra steps to make sure you're taking care of it long term. This piece is just a little bit bigger than the other ones. But it shouldn't take me too long to do this. I like how they have, you know, put in the mold, it looks like they molded it where it looks like it has sand and debris up here on the engine and stuff. But you can do that with your own terrain. You know, let's say you didn't have that molded in the piece of terrain, but you wanted it to look worn and a little gritty and stuff. You can always glue the sand or basing materials right onto it. Even at a later date, I'll do something where I can show you how to do chipped paint that I do for tanks and terrain, you know, big tanks and things like that, where I actually use salt, like big grain salt, on the miniature and paint over it. And then when you remove, you know, when you finish with the base coat, then you remove the salt by brushing it off because it's not adhered on there. And then what happens is you get a chipped paint look. It's very, very unique and very different looking. I'll definitely do that in one of my tutorials where we actually just go, hey, this is how you do chipped paint. Now, I have a couple of different techniques, but that's That's my favorite, is using the salt. But there's a couple of other techniques we can all use to give that chipped paint look. And do it pretty simply. And by salt, I mean like not just table salt, like big crystal salt. Usually what you would use to melt ice or make ice cream, or just natural salt, you know, the bigger grain kind of stuff is what you're looking for. Yeah, I'm really liking this blue. It looks pretty good as a base coat. I like that a lot. I'm not sure. I'll let this dry and then we'll take a look. We'll test it on one of the smaller pieces with that medium color, just to kind of see if there's, you know, if I think it's a good match. If not, I'll do something else. But I do like this. Kind of dark midnight blue, almost purpley. Somebody in the comments kind of jot down what marine group has like a dark blue. What chapters? I mean, I know somebody's going to say Night Lords, but that's not really Imperium. This looks like an Imperial. But there's no Aquila on it, so I guess it could be Night Lords. But, you know, what came in the box was, of course, Space Marines and Tyranids when it originally came out. Which I do have the other pieces, all the little other terrain pieces that came with this, and I'm sure before the end I'll do a bonus video of like, they had like teleport homers and brood, you know, like where Tyranids were spawning and stuff like that. So, all right, well, I think that's it. That's looking pretty good, and I'm all done with all the pieces, and pretty happy with that. All right, I'll clean up my brush, and we'll see you the next time when I start doing the second coat.